Have you experienced the awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system? Obviously.
Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. A new low price and free games.
Mind-blowing graphics of Panasonic Real 3DO.
3DO.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about the 3DO console, the games, and everything in between. I am Bill, and this is Threk. How you doing, Threk?
Hey, I'm all right. It's hot for some reason. Like I woke up today, it was like 60 degrees, and I'm like, this is February. What's going on here, man? So it's the first day I've gone to work without a jacket, didn't need it, and I'm very confused. Very confused. They say it's supposed to rain. It hasn't rained yet, so we're still waiting on that. But yeah, very, very confused because I like the cold. So it being really warm, not a fan. But how are you, Bill? Is it warm for you too?
So I woke up and it was below 30, and I had frost on my windshield. And then when I left work, it was 60. So about the same kind of. I still had to wear a jacket.
Yeah, like we had snow on the ground here like a couple days ago.
So do we, and it's melted now. I can see that the plow ripped up my front lawn, which is nice. But I don't have to deal with that. The HOA will take care of it. So
yeah, climate change, it's real. So, but as I was leaving work, a lot of times they'll have like a little cart and they'll have like water bottles in there. And I saw this and I thought it was interesting. We can do a live taste test, if you will. It's Cheerwine Zero Sugar.
Huh.
I've had Cheerwine, I think, once, and I don't even know what it is. Like, I barely remember what it tastes like. But I saw the Zero Sugar one. I was like, see what the big deal is, right? So, this will be quick. Get that sizzle for everybody. Smells like Cheerwine, but diet. I still don't know what that is. Like, have you had Cheerwine?
I have not.
Okay.
It's not really. I don't even know if it's around here, to be honest.
Okay. It might be a Midwest thing, but I guess we're technically, I don't know. Ohio is like kind of, I say Ohio is like somewhere between the Northeast, the Midwest, and the South, because you get all three, depending on where you are in the state. But yeah, this is weird.
Like, I've heard of it, but like I've gone to the store, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
So either I'm not paying attention or it's just not a thing around here.
Crafted cherry taste. So maybe it's supposed to be like a cherry soda, but not like a Coke cherry or something like that. So, it's fine, I guess. I don't know.
So I went to the retro store recently, and I was just looking at stuff. I'm at that point where like they kind of, all the stuff that they have that's worth anything I already have. So I'm just kind of like going through the scraps.
Do they know you by name?
Not at this one. The other one they do. But I saw this on the shelf and I was like, I had to buy it. It was a wired 360 controller.
Oh, I have one. I have one right here.
Nice. Yeah, I saw it up there.
I like the wired controllers because like the play and charge kits are so like iffy these days. Like some are good, bad. Any third party one you get is trash. And I mean the battery thing is nice, but I don't want to have to constantly dealing with like say like rechargeable batteries or whatever. So yeah, so I grabbed a wired one. So,
yeah, I saw it. It was like
$15 maybe.
They wanted 20 for this one, so I mean that's not too bad. I miss the wired controllers sometimes.
And it's still a great controller.
No, it is. I don't like the D-pad, but most people don't. So
I've held worse D-pads. In fact, interestingly enough, I don't know if you're like me and you scroll on YouTube a lot, you'll get like those random polls, especially on the mobile version.
Yeah.
And there was one that was do you prefer the 360 or the PS3 controller? And 360 was winning by a fair amount. But PS3 controller has defenders, and My main thing is I don't like how fragile the PS3 controller is. Like they're so bendy. Like I could probably break that thing if I tried hard enough. Whereas the
It's the
360 ones are nice and
consequence.
sturdy.
It's the consequence of it being a controller that was like literally like 20 years old by that point.
Yeah, exactly. Like the PS3 controller, I just never liked it. I always thought it was a rough go of things, but But on the other side, once Microsoft had the 360 controller, like the One and the Series are basically the same thing, but with some modernizations here and there. Like I still really enjoy the Series controller. It's not that different from the One controller, but it has like a much better D-pad. I like the different texture and like the weight distribution. Like the One controller felt really light. This one has more weight to it, and that weight is right in here, right in the grips, which is what I like. The triggers are textured, so it feels really good. So to me, it's just like a good controller I don't think about. I just hold it and I just start playing it, and that's what the Series controller is for me.
I think the general consensus, like with this generation, is like the DualSense and the Series controller. They're like both fine, and like I think everybody's response is it's basically a preference thing at this point.
Yeah, though I keep hearing Xbox is going to do a new Series controller, but have like the haptic, like adaptive trigger feedback, whatever thing in there.
I mean, it is a cool feature, even though it makes me think my controller's broken half the time.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to try. I don't know if I'd be willing to buy a whole new controller to try it. I mean, having a second Series controller wouldn't be bad. So maybe I'll get one just to see how it is. But for the most part, I just turn like the vibration off for the most part, because most games, when they have it, it's just way like the Series vibration is way too excessive. Like a lot of times,
does Xbox use HD Rumble at this point, or are they still using the old style?
I think it's still the old style. And I mean, HD Rumble's kind of whatever. Like it never really got utilized, but I think that's just because it's not a standard. But like with the Series vibration, a lot of times it was so strong, I'd have to put the controller on the floor.
Oh yeah, it's like the old PS2 controllers.
Yeah, it's like when you're cutting your grass, and you're holding the push mower and it's just vibrating like so hard, your hands feel weird. Like I don't want that when I'm playing a game.
Yeah,
not even if it's lawn mowing simulator.
To me, like Rumble is a hilarious concept to me, because when you really think about it, all it really is they take a motor and they just put it off center, so it's like broken, and then they just make it whirl around like hell.
Yeah, I never understood the whole like immersion thing. I don't know. It just feels kind of pointless to me. There are some games that use Rumble really, really well, but most games it's just like, oh, it's going to shake here and there. Like weirdly enough, as audio listeners, I have Power Wash Simulator behind me because I'm playing that again. The DLC came out, so praise the Power Wash. They actually use Rumble decently well, because when you're washing, when something finishes, you'll get the light, it'll blink, and then your controller will vibrate a little bit as well. So you get a lot of different like tactile feedback from completing it, and that's a little nice feature. Just it rumbles a little bit, and I like that. So, and some games actually let you turn the rumble to just like a little bit, which I like.
That's like the one thing about HD Rumble I like, is that it kind of like shifts to like different intensities depending on the moment in the game. It
can, but even then, I'm still not the biggest fan of HD Rumble. To me, HD Rumble, it feels like I always hear it more than I feel it. It sounds like an old Nokia phone on vibrate.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't. It's fine, but I just think it's kind of whatever. But it's not bad, so I just leave it on.
I will say one last thing on Rumble before we move on from this. I will say one thing I found that was really fascinating was I was experimenting around with the Bleemcast emulator for Dreamcast recently, and I was playing Metal Gear Solid, and Metal Gear Solid has like Rumble programmed into it at certain points. The emulator actually recognizes the Dreamcast Rumble pack, and it actually would rumble at the points. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool!" Like they actually thought that far ahead with it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of emulators, one last thing. There was that Virtual Boy emulator that was released for the 3DS, and I downloaded it, grabbed the entire ROM library of the Virtual Boy, which is like 20 games, I think,
Something like that.
and it's great. It is fantastic. The 3D support is really what sells it, and I would say this is like the definitive way to play the Virtual Boy library. If you're curious at all to Virtual Boy, which I know some of us were like, who cares, right? It's the Virtual Boy. There's a handful of games that are actually pretty solid.
I mean, I as an owner of a Virtual Boy who has actually experienced like the experience, there is something very interesting about it. It's just not something I'd recommend playing for like hours on end.
Yeah, the 3DS feels like a compromise where you can get that 3D experience, and the 3D is done fantastically well. The first thing I booted up was Mario's Tennis because of that famous intro. You know, I wanted to see if Mario's ball would actually come into my face, and he did. So kudos. And the game is, I'm not a big fan of the game itself, but
No, it's a very average tennis game, honestly.
yeah. But I will say, Wario Land, Virtual Boy Wario Land, does a lot of really cool things with depth.
Mhm.
And it is brought right in the 3DS, which
I always tell people, like, because a lot of people don't understand what makes Virtual Boy Wario Land so good. You really have to play it either, I guess, with this emulator or on an original Virtual Boy because you miss so much of the effect otherwise.
yeah. But on top of that, it's a really good 2D platformer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the only one we have on the Virtual Boy. So, you know, we have to deal with that. But yeah, the 3DS, this 3DS Virtual Boy emulator, to me, it feels like it's the definitive way to play the Virtual Boy library without, you know, spending however much Virtual Boys are these days to get one. And I don't really feel like it's worth it. So,
No, especially if you don't know how to set the thing up, because the big misconception with Virtual Boy is that it obliterates your eyes. And
yeah.
in reality, I mean, it's not something you should be playing 24/7 regardless, but the big misconception is a lot of people don't realize is you have to set the thing properly. Like there's those two like dials on the top that you have to set. As long as you have those perfectly aligned to your eyes, it's not going to hurt your eyes. It might strain them a little, but that's mostly just because of what kind of medium it is.
And I think probably it's just having that striking red color there and like everything else being closed off. That would be my guess. I've looked into a Virtual Boy, but I've never actually played a game on it because one of the game stores I used to go to had one. And, you know, I put my face up to it, but they wouldn't let me play a game on it. It might have been broken, or maybe they just didn't want me messing with it. I don't know. So, but this 3DS emulator is really good. And you can swap the face buttons between like being A and B or being the extra D-pad, which only works for like Teleroboxer. Teleroboxer is great.
It is. It's honestly the one game that truly like understood what the Virtual Boy was supposed to be.
Yeah, it's really cool because you use the two D-pads to, you know, to operate your hands differently. But then you use the shoulder buttons, or they'd be like the back buttons on the actual controller to punch.
Yes.
You know, and it's really cool. It's like if Punch Out had more strategy and was first person.
Yeah, it's basically just a cool a more. I think the big like thing was it was basically like a futuristic version of Punch Out.
Yeah, but with more strategy and more control over your character, and being first person was nice. Like there's so many Virtual Boy games that aren't first person, and it's like, no, why bother?
The only two I can think of are that one and then like Red Alarm, but fuck Red Alarm.
Yeah, well, there's also that like first person survival horror Virtual Boy game that was Japan only. That game's really cool. It's a shame you can't play it because I don't think there's a fan translation of it, but
I think the only other game that properly uses both D-pads is 3D Tetris.
Yes, because you need it to adjust it properly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
a cool weird game too.
Oh yeah, but it's a really cool emulator. It was super easy to set up, no problem. Like just get the CIA file, load it through FBI. If you've modded your 3DS, that easy, you're good to go. So easy recommend.
Nice. One last thing before we get into our topic for today. I actually ordered a physical copy of the Switch version of Plumber's Nowhere Ties.
Oh, we can order that stuff now?
I mean, there's resellers on eBay. That's where I found my copy.
Ooh. Let me see if somebody's has the Xbox version.
I saw a couple of those. Basically, I saw the I just want that anime cover because the anime cover is so hilarious to me.
Yeah. Let's see. I see PlayStation and Switch. don't see an Xbox One yet.
No, I swear I saw one.
There's probably not that many, but
To be fair, yeah.
see, I probably should have just ordered it when it came up, but I didn't, because I know some people who, yeah, got their versions well ahead of time. So, ugh. Yeah, I don't see it. Oh well, I'll just get it digitally, anyways. I mean, most games on Xbox I get
Oh.
digitally anyhow. So
There's a CIB version for 3DO going for $5.99.
yeah, no thanks. No, thank you.
I'll take my loose jewel case, thank you.
Yeah. Though, as far as I know, even the digital version isn't up yet, like on the
No,
Xbox
it's not.
Store. So let's see. The Xbox version they have is sold out. So, but well, I know with Xbox they have. I think their print numbers for physical copies are higher than the other two. Like I think they start at like 100,000 or something like that. So I don't know. Maybe that's all they did. But I'll get the physical. It's still coming out in March, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
I didn't see any delays. So.
Let's see. March 5th. Ooh, that's next week.
Ooh. We're gonna have to start
Ooh.
planning.
Well, that'll be the next game. Because
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We could do that.
I think we should.
Yeah,
I'll drop Infinite Wealth just to play that game.
It won't take you very long. Trust me on that.
No. But the good thing with like Infinite Wealth is it's a game I can put some time into, then leave it, play something else, come back, and I'm still on track.
Oh yeah.
So,
but yeah, so we did play a game for this week. Not a lot to say about it, but we will still talk about it. It was Shockwave. Nice.
Yeah, the Shocker.
Nice, fancy EA covers.
Speaking of Rumble, Shockwave,
Yeah.
I still have the disc in there. An advertisement for Road Rash. That's pretty nice.
And that's cool. So
Yeah.
you have the manual.
I do.
Mine also came with this fun thing. Got a little pamphlet of EA games for 3DO.
Ooh, my man, John Madden. There he is.
It's actually kind of cool.
I'm still
we got,
recovering from my cold, so I may sound a little funky.
It's actually kind of cool. Like we got like Super Wing Commander,
Oh hell
Theme
yeah!
Park, Sherlock Holmes, Escape from Monster
Hmm.
Manor, Sesame Street. Fuck yeah.
Oh, we need to do the Sesame Street game.
Twisted.
Is there a 3DO Sesame Street game?
Oh, yeah.
What's it called?
Whatever this thing is.
I can't even read that.
It
Here,
is
let me pull it up.
Sesame
over.
Street numbers.
Oh hell
yeah.
yes! Are you kidding me, dude? I put more time into Sesame Street Countdown on the NES than I'd care to admit. All right, so we'll do it.
Oh, and
I find Sesame Street games fascinating.
the best game of all time too. The Electronic Arts 3D Atlas.
I think I loaded that up on emulator once.
Just to see.
Yeah. I think it was just like Google Maps, basically.
I've had this thing forever and I've never actually opened it up to look at it. That's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, let's see.
There's a bunch of games in there that we're gonna have to cover at some point.
Oh yeah. To get to Sesame Street. Jesus Christ.
Oh, is it extremely expensive?
It's like $100.
Yeah, that's an emulator right there.
Oh, come on.
It's like the fucking
It's
putt games.
fucking
Those are
Sesame Street.
yeah. The putt games for 3DO are up there too for whatever fucking reason.
The only thing I could guess is nobody bought this.
Probably.
Because, like, if you had $700 to spend on a 3DO, you didn't have kids.
No.
No
Most likely
shot.
not.
But yeah, I find Sesame Street games fascinating. But we'll talk about that when we talk about the numbers, because I've played more Sesame Street games than I care to admit.
Yeah. So, initial impressions. What did you think of Shockwave?
When I looked at the cover, one game came to mind. You may know the game I'm thinking. Cybermorph.
Yeah, to a degree. No face, but
There is a face.
true. It's not
but not like Green Lady. Where'd
that
you learn to
berate-
fly? Not
berates
her.
you every 5 seconds.
Yeah, no, just that one lady who looks familiar, but I can't pinpoint where I've seen her from. Where she goes, "This isn't a game, Lieutenant."
Yeah, I love that one because I'm just like, shut up.
Because I see her, I'm like, she looks so familiar, but I cannot place her. What was her name?
I forget.
Because the credits are in the back. Was she Major Stewart? Was that her?
I want to say so.
Okay, she looked familiar, but it could just be she looks like somebody else. I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah.
when I booted this up the first time, I was kind of like playing it, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely one of EA's early attempts at 3D.
Yeah. It was one of those, like, I don't have a lot of experience in flying games. Like,
Yeah.
I've played the Rogue Squadrons. Those are fantastic. I've been meaning to check out Star Wars Squadrons, like the new one. If that game's any good or not, let me know, people. I played Crimson Skies on the original Xbox. That game is fantastic. I love that game. I've been meaning to get into Ace Combat. In fact,
That's
I have
mine right there.
I have 7, but I've been meaning, but I haven't like sat down and properly played it yet. I'm trying to think if there's any other flying games I've played.
Star Fox.
Star Fox. I haven't played that much Star Fox. Sorry, Chris. I've tried, and I don't know. It just doesn't click for me. I don't know why. I like Star Fox Assault. You know,
Fun fact that developed by the Ace Combat 2 team.
that kind of makes sense. I don't know. It feels more refined than like Star Fox 64, but I think that's an unfair comparison. But beyond that, like, I've played Flight Sim. I remember back in high school when I was in the junior ROTC program, ROTC program. We had a day where they set up like a flight stick and everything for us to do Flight Sim, which was cool. And I tried playing the newest one on Series X. Gorgeous game, super cool. Adapted for controller pretty well. Played like an hour of it and went, it's really cool, but it's not a game for me.
When it comes to like flight sims, like I've noticed like there's a certain group of people who absolutely love that stuff, like, but they also take it very seriously.
Yeah, they have the whole
more power to them.
the whole setup, right? Which I always say, like, why not just get your pilot's license, dude?
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
it's
I mean,
more expensive.
It's
I don't
expensive. That's the whole thing.
know. That's fair.
See, for me, whenever I think of a flying game or like a space combat game, I always am immediately drawn to like I have my immediate comparison is always going to be Ace Combat, just because Ace Combat is like the go-to like air combat series to the point where the first one was called Air Combat over here.
Yeah, I think it's like if you're in the know about flying games, that's probably the one you think of.
It's also kind of stupid. I like Ace Combat because it doesn't take itself seriously and it's kind of dumb. Like,
isn't it just like anime?
It's that, but it's also the whole gimmick is it takes place in like this fake world called Strange Reel. And because there was a couple games they did like the combat, like Assault Horizon games, those took place in the real world and they weren't nearly as fun because they were like too real.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
But yeah,
7 was
like-
the big return to the goofiness.
Yeah, like I've been meaning to try more like flying games or like, you know, spaceship combat games, but it's just it's hard to find the right one, you know? Like, I think why I enjoyed Crimson Skies so much was because it plays very similar to Rogue Squadron, like particularly Rogue Squadron 2 and 3. You know, and those games I think are fantastic. Like, those are super fun.
Yeah, that was a good like exclusive original Xbox game that doesn't get a lot of talk anymore.
For real. Though one of the coolest things about Crimson Skies and about like the Xbox in general is that if you're weird, you can, through like LAN cables, system link between all 4 generations of Xbox and play a multiplayer match of Crimson Skies.
Yeah. Something goofy about that. That's amazing.
But I like that. You know, it's a quirkiness and it's like a weird attention to detail. Like, how many people do that? Probably not a lot of people, but it's cool that it exists, you know? And yeah, Crimson Skies is great. Like, anybody listening, if you have an Xbox and you haven't played Crimson Skies, do yourself a favor, play it. It is a very, very fun game. It's
was,
and it's short. It's like 5,
Yeah.
6 hours maybe. The final boss is you're fighting like this giant electrified blimp, and it
Yeah.
has like a whole crazy lore to it and everything. It is really cool. And it is a shame we've never gotten a proper follow up.
To me, like there was 2 games on the original Xbox that always stuck out to me. It was Crimson Sky and then Bloodwake.
Yeah, I could see that with Bloodwake. I think the game that intrigued me the most was probably, well, it was Halo, of course, but trying to think of the one. Blink's the Time Sweeper.
Link's and then Voodoo Vince are like the 2 like.
Yeah, I still need to play Voodoo Vince. When it drops in price on the Series X, the remaster version, I'll get it and play it. Is it like a collectathon platformer?
It's more linear, which is I kind of like about it.
Okay, so it's like more of like a Penny's Big Breakaway type.
Kinda. It's a very the whole gimmick with it is, before we're a little off topic, but that's us. Its whole gimmick is the whole you're playing as a voodoo doll, and like you have to like hurt yourself to like do your moves because he's a voodoo doll.
I like that. That sounds cool.
Phil Spencer worked on that game.
That's cool. I mean,
it was like one of his.
Phil has worked on games. I think some people tend to forget that he is kind of a game dev.
Yeah, he worked on Voodoo Vince, and like it's a great game. I know he's spoken fondly of it over the years. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can tell of the big 3, like the heads of them. He's the one who's like, oh yeah, I play games. I love games.
I'm convinced that Phil Spencer is the reason Voodoo Vince got re-released. To be honest.
I wouldn't be surprised. Who did the port of that?
I don't know who did the port. I know the game was created by Beep Interactive, and I think it's like the only game that Beep Interactive made.
Beep Interactive.
Yeah.
That sounds like a 90s dev team that doesn't exist anymore.
I don't think they do, or they were just like a team within Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, the original was published by Microsoft, so is it technically a first-party game?
It was one of the few that they had.
Well, there you go. Well, there was a lot of exclusives on the original Xbox.
True.
If you look at what they had as far as they were like trying to like every like genre we're trying to have something just
the
for
original
it,
Xbox is to me still the most interesting phase in Microsoft's game history just because they really tried so many different things.
Yeah, and if you dig through that back catalog, there's a lot of weird shit in there. Shit that people don't even think about anymore. Oh, yeah. Like it's far beyond what's like on the backwards compatible stuff. Like there's so much more weird stuff.
I mean, I'm a Sony fanboy, but I fucking love the original Xbox just for how fucking insane that library is.
Like I've been thinking about getting one because I've never owned one and just trying to find all the weird stuff.
Oh yeah.
But that'll happen in the future.
Now, going back to Shockwave, this game is a little interesting. So 1994, this was a very early 3DO game. And
you can tell.
One thing I'd found, I spent like an hour like trying to figure out who made this game because the developer, it says it on the front box. It's very tiny there, is the Advanced Technology Group.
Yes.
Which has a Moby Games page, but they have no logo. And I was going through and I found out Advanced Technology Group is just a division of EA.
I mean, that's what I assumed.
Yeah. It was weird to me because I was like, is this a studio? Because I could not find any information on them other than a Moby Games article that literally just lists that they made Shockwave and Shockwave 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're apparently just that they were a division within Microsoft, Electronic Arts Game Studios. Mm-hmm. And they made this game and its sequel. I also discovered that this game was later ported to PlayStation under the name Shockwave Assault.
To differentiate it?
I don't know, to be perfectly honest. It really isn't clear.
Yeah, it was also released on the Saturn and, oh boy, I get to say this, the Apple Bandai Pippin.
The Pippin.
Yeah.
Everyone loves the Pippin.
Oh God.
Except for Steve Jobs.
the least favorite of the Hobbits.
Yeah. God, the Pippin of all things.
Well, like the two companies you would never think would work together in any capacity are Apple and Bandai. Like
Yeah.
was it just like alphabetical?
Who knows, to be honest?
Yeah. Like does anybody who work at Bandai or Bamco technically, were they there for the Pippin?
I'm sure someone was there for it. Honestly, the only reason I'd ever want to get a Pippin is to play Marathon, but apparently Marathon's getting re-released on PlayStation at some point in the future. So
The old the Bungie game?
yeah,
That was released on Pippin?
yeah. Well, because it was basically a Mac.
Yeah. Like they were trying to consoleize the Mac.
Basically, it was basically a consoleized Mac for the time.
Weird.
Yeah, it was an odd system. You can tell Steve Jobs was not there at the time because if you watch any sort of advertisement for it, it is hilariously cringe.
Yeah.
So going into now the gameplay for Shockwave, it is a very standard flight combat simulator game.
It feels like it's almost on rails.
It's on rails, but then it has like those like all range mode sections where it's like you can kind of go everywhere.
It reminds me a little bit of Star Fox in that like it's like you're constantly moving and you just kind of have to react to things.
Yeah.
But it's in first person.
Yes.
And like you can tell Star Fox is like the big influence on this game. But
yeah.
But it's like they took all the stuff that made Star Fox good and went, nah, get rid of that. You know, we did talk about like the Earth getting invaded in 2019. So 5 years. So 5 years. 5 years ago, this game happened.
That is a funny date, just considering it was 1 year before everything went to shit.
Yeah,
that's actually
funny.
Kind of funny.
I mean, it's so funny when you play these kind of games, right? Or anything that's like trying to be dystopian in like the 80s and 90s. And it's like all these years that to them seem like, oh, like 2022, like so far away. And it's like, well, we're here now.
I know.
They didn't think that far ahead. Like Star Trek was smart. They're like, oh, we're in like the 25th century or whatever.
Yeah,
so
it's like
far
super
ahead. Far. Like who fucking cares? Or even say like the Nier games, right? Like Nier Replicant's 2053, I think. And then Nier Automata is like 23 something fucking crazy. So they're smart about it. Like super in the future, who cares, right? So you won't have it bite you in the ass, and if it does, you'll be dead by that point. So who cares?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things is on the back of the box. There's a little blurb about like the plot of the game, but like my favorite is literally London is burning, Los Angeles is devastated, the Amazon is crawling with alien forces. You and your elite squadron of crack fighter pilots must repel them marauding hordes and save the human race from total devastation.
Now that doesn't mean like, you know, like crack pilots as if they're really good. It's like, no, they're actually on crack.
Well,
because by 2019, the United States military has been able to weaponize crack inside their fighter pilots to improve their capabilities. We still don't have healthcare yet, but we have found a way to use crack to make fighter pilots better.
And judging by all the FMV in this game, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yes, because this game, it has quite a bit of FMV, but at least I didn't get super far in the game. But for me, it's like it wasn't anything that memorable.
No, it wasn't like as much as Crash and Burn kind of sucked. The FMV in that game is still funny to me.
Oh yeah, that stuff is kooky, but it feels like it's trying to be kooky to like get your attention. Whereas this feels like it's trying to use it as like a plot device. Like it's probably Wing Commander, I would say, probably hangs over this game.
Well, Wing Commander is just, I'll say about Wing Commander, the acting in Wing Commander is at least, it's trying to be serious, and at least they're kind of taking it seriously. This is like trying to be serious, but the actors are just like, they were clearly like got off the street or something.
They're like their local community theater type actors, you know, whereas like Wing Commander has Mark Hamill, you know.
Mark Hamill, you can tell that there was some care put into that.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think there probably was care put into this, but you can tell they just weren't as competent in making these.
That's probably the better way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because like gameplay wise, it's like fine, but it's so average in like every way.
Yeah, I know. Like for some reason I was playing this game, it made me think of do you ever play the Independence game? The Independence Day game?
Yeah, I own that on PS1, and I don't even know, like, so many people always reference that one, and they're always like, it's like we bought it because we like the movie, and the game is boring as fuck.
I mean, if anything, I would flip it. Like I don't like that movie at all. Um, which is another podcast. And then I've played the game and I'm like, the game isn't great, but I don't mind. I think I like third person flying games more than first person.
Yeah.
So
See, to me, when I played the Independence game, I was just like, Ace Combat's more fun, which is unfortunately just an argument I make when anytime I play a flight game these days.
like even like the original Ace Combat.
Yeah, I mean, I'd play that. I'd play Air Combat over Independence Day. I mean, Ace Combat 2 is still like the goat of that series, but
Yeah. But it's like but it's almost like comparing, say, like a regular old racing game on this to like Gran Turismo 2. You know,
yeah,
like
it's
it's
like,
such a big evolution that it almost feels unfair.
you know what? A series that kind of I get reminded of too. There's a Colony Wars. If anyone remembers Colony Wars on a PS1,
I've heard of that name. That name is familiar.
it was basically a Star Fox-ish kind of game that Psygnosis made. During that,
Good old Psygnosis.
yeah, during that like brief period where they were owned by Sony, but they still had like independence to a degree. It was before they got kind of like wrapped into Sony directly and became Studio Liverpool.
Mhm. So they were trying to have their own Star Fox and later on their own Fire Emblem,
Yes, in a sense.
but they never had their own Mario. Or did I don't think Crash was a replacement for that.
Nah, Crash was too much of its own thing. If anything, like Spyro was more Mario-ish.
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Just in terms of setup, not so much entirely like design-wise.
Yeah, I'd say so. Though I'd rather play the Spyro trilogy on PS1 than Mario 64. Hot take? Maybe.
Yeah, it depends. Honestly, it depends on who you ask, because I mean, a lot of people would prefer Spyro over Mario
Mhm.
64 is a great game, but it is also like the most basic platformer ever.
And I just like it gets so much hype that I'm just like, I just don't care.
To me,
I
like
just-
the Sony's closest thing to Mario 64 is Jak and Daxter.
Okay. Like the original, like the precursor legacy, is that what
Yeah.
it's called?
That
Somehow
that
I
game
remembered
is
that.
that game is about as much of a Mario 64 clone as you can get.
Yeah. But with like clones, yeah, like Shockwave, it feels like it's trying to be kind of Star Foxy, but like comparing it to the flying games around it at the time, Star Fox, Independence Day, the original Ace Combat, like hell, even Cybermorph, like all those games I find much more interesting. Even if this one is like more competently made than some of them, right? I just feel like there's just nothing here, you
Yeah,
know?
it's very basic.
Like you're flying on essentially like a Google map, right? Like a Google Earth, like flat thing, shooting random like alien creatures. And I find it really hard to avoid their lasers. You occasionally crash into like pyramids and shit. And then there's like refill stations, which are nice. But then but you have this very specific track you have to follow. And if you even veer a little bit outside of it, they just start damaging your ship for no reason.
Yeah, like with the controls, like one thing I really noticed playing this was the controls are for the most part fine, but they are a little slippery at times.
Yeah, I was playing it with the fighting pad and it felt fine.
Yeah, it's like when things it would control fine. It was when you tried to get precise that it kind of got slippery and all over the place.
Yeah, and I noticed there was a little bit of like a cooldown when you would try to like shoot your missiles,
Yeah.
you know? Cuz what I liked is the moment your cursor like lit up on an enemy and you shot a missile, it locked onto him, you know?
Yeah.
But I always noticed it wasn't as precise as I wanted it to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was the whole thing kind of felt like a tech demo in a lot of ways.
That's what this game feels like. It feels like it can do this, but it felt like there wasn't enough emphasis put on the game actually being anything good. You know what
I
I mean?
think
But I wouldn't say the game is bad.
no, it's so average. That's kind of
Like kind of painfully average.
like it feels like EA was experimenting with how to make 3D graphics because I think at the time this was one of their earliest 3D games.
It's a
And I
very early 3D game. Like you can tell. Like even pre Mario 64, which was I think 2 years after this. Like
well, I think a part of it is like the reason they did like a flight combat game is because like that formula kind of already existed with Star Fox, at least to prove that 3D kind of this game could work in 3D.
yeah,
And
and unlike the original Star Fox, this game has like texture.
yeah, we'll get into it with graphics, but like this game does, there was effort put into this game. I
Oh
just
yeah.
feel you can tell that this was clearly the first attempt at something.
Yeah, like this is an era where this kind of 3D graphics and this type of more kind of pushing more 3D style gaming is still very, very new.
Hmm.
And unless you were there at the time, it's really hard to go back. You know,
Yeah.
some of these 3D games retain their charm, but I think those are ones that have more significant art styles. You know,
Like to
where
me, like even like comparing this to like Road Rash, it's like you can tell EA had figured some stuff out.
well, even then, Road Rash doesn't have like a lot of 3D models. It's more just like a lot of really good 2D sprite work, but done on like a 3D plane. Like I think the road is 3D. I think.
The road and the buildings are 3D, and it's like
Yeah,
very stylized.
yeah. Like it's much more tastefully done. Like a nice mixture of 2D and 3D. And that kind of game, it works a lot better with what it's trying to do. Which
I think
that came out after this. I think.
yes, I think the biggest comparison, honestly, is like this was one of EA's first games on the 3DO, and then you look at like one of their last games on the 3DO, which was Need for Speed, and it's like the difference there is like you clearly can tell that they learned a lot.
Yeah, and also technology was catching up as well.
Hmm.
You know, because this era, you know, from like '94 to like I would say about 2001. You know, like the whole '90s was basically the video game industry trying desperately, or I think was desperately trying to get 3D to catch up to them.
Yeah, because the 3DO itself was like the first like really purpose built 3D console. I mean,
Yes.
technically the Jaguar came first, but the Jaguar's hardware was such a clusterfuck that like it was never going to be the read it. It was never going to reach its full potential.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how I know it has a really big like fan game scene, like people make games for it. And I don't know if these people have actually figured it out and are able to make games that utilize the full potential of the Jaguar hardware. But like most of the games on there just look like at worst Sega Genesis games and at best like early Sega Saturn. Like at
So
best, like
the reason
more like the 2D stuff.
the reason why a lot of the games on Jaguar just looked kind of like Genesis games was a lot of developers ignored the Jaguar's main graphics hardware and just used the Motorola 68,000 that was in the Jaguar and was intended to be a control chip, but most developers, because the Genesis also has a Motorola 6800, basically were like, yeah, that's a processor, we can use that.
And I believe for the more fancy stuff, it was like the two processors, Tom and Jerry.
The Tom and Jerry chip.
Yeah, like I think it was the devs tried to ask them, like, oh, like we need manuals to figure out how this work, and Atari never made any.
Yeah.
So they were kind of just left on their own to figure it out. And
Well, that's one of the main
weren't
reasons
gonna do
why
that.
most Jaguar games don't have music is because the Jerry chip was the sound chip, but a lot of developers use the Jerry chip for other things, and they couldn't put music in because they were using the sound chip to do basic processing, which was supposed to be done by the Motorola 6800.
Yeah, it explains why the Doom port, despite being a great port, doesn't have any music when you're playing the game. It has it in the menus, but not in the gameplay.
It's because John Carmack was a programming wizard, and he basically figured out, oh, I can use the sound chip to do all this cool stuff.
Yeah. But then they're like, well, what about the music? And he's like, what do you mean?
He's like, you need that?
Who cares?
So going back to Shockwave though, like we're kind of glazing over the gameplay, but there really isn't anything stand out to really talk about.
It's as basic of a shooter as you could get, but it's not really that exciting. It's just you go forward, you'll shoot a couple people, you're done, and then you just go forward again. Like it's
I think
very repetitive.
I think the best way to describe the gameplay is functional.
Yeah. And they're trying to like have some kind of thing, or the thing they're trying to do to make it different is like, oh, like all your resources are limited, like your health, your lasers, your thrusters, your missiles, all that.
Yeah.
Which I think is just trying to encourage you to be more strategic and not just mash the laser button the whole time. Because I'm sure when they were like playtesting the game, that's probably what people were doing, just mashing the laser button. So like, why would I use anything else? Like, what the fuck's the point? So they're like, oh, we have to put a limit on it, you know? But then they realized, oh, these levels are so long and the resource cap that they give you isn't enough to make it through the whole level. So they have to give you like resource refillers throughout the level. So it almost makes the resource management pointless.
Yeah,
you know?
I would agree.
Yeah, like it just doesn't solve the problem. And really the main problem is the game just isn't that interesting. You know?
Yeah,
like
that's the
like
biggest
there's only
thing.
like a few types of enemies and they all attack you essentially like the same way. And there's not a lot of opportunities for maneuverability. There's no like barrel rolling or anything like that. So you just kind of have to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's as basic as it gets.
Yeah,
really.
like there's only 10 levels in the 3DO version. I think there's 15 in the PlayStation version. And I got about 5 through 5 of them before I just was like, I'm bored. I don't want to play this anymore.
I think I did too.
I mean,
I've been playing so many games, you know, that I'm like, oh yeah, I have to play this game. And then I would sit down and like I would take a break from like Evil Within or something to play this. And I'm like, this is so boring. Like
that was the thing. It was like I felt like I got everything out of the game by like level 5. And I was like, is there really going to be anything else that I really need? I mean, there's a boss at the end apparently, but I didn't feel like getting to it.
Yeah, like at least say the Independence game that I mentioned, at least there's a much better structure to it. You know, and it's more of engaging of a game to play. You know, even if it's not the best game in the world, and it isn't, but at least there's something there, right?
Yes.
At least with like Star Fox. Like Star Fox has fantastic level design and it keeps you engaged the whole way through. And they're all really short levels. You know, like Star Fox is essentially an arcade game.
Yes.
You know, and that's what keeps the pace going. Where Shockwave, I think it didn't, like if it's going for the Star Fox formula, it doesn't realize why that worked so well. You know, it's trying to be technically more impressive, and it is, than the Super Nintendo version. But better graphics don't make a better game.
Yeah. And speaking of graphics, I guess this is the best time to get into graphics and sound. I mean, this game looks good.
Is there music?
Not really. I mean, there's sound effects.
Pew pew.
Oh, you know what?
Pew pew.
I didn't even think about this. This is an early EA game. I played on the FC10. I should have played on the FC1. It's just to see.
Yeah.
If that memory issue was a thing.
Maybe. But
I'm going to have to look into that because there is a composer listed on the Wikipedia.
I mean, there's a little bit of music in like the FMV cutscenes, but that was really it.
Actually, there's 3 composers in this game.
The hell?
Interesting. Yeah, that's actually, I'm wondering now, maybe like it's similar to the Road Rash where like the FC10 can't play the music for some reason.
Maybe that's a possibility, but
I mean, the sound effects were fine. Like they were standard for the time.
Nothing really that interesting about them.
No. Graphically, I will say there was some decent variety to the levels.
Yeah, sure.
For 94.
I feel like that second level where they have the mountains, you know, I was like, oh, look at that. You know, they're messing with the levels a little bit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it looks fine. It's very, It's very 1994. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, but when you look at all the other games that came out that year, it's like, why would you play this?
Exactly. Like,
I mean, even hell on the PC side, there was I think it was around the same time Star Wars Rebel Assault
yes.
or Star Wars TIE Fighter, those games, like the X-Wing TIE Fighter games, which are much more interesting. Those are first-person flying games as well, and they're far and away beyond this.
Oh yeah. What do you think of the performance overall? Like, I thought it ran fine enough.
It feels slow, but I think slow in a way that a lot of early 3D games are, where I think like in 2D development, I think they were so used to things running at 60 no problem. I mean, frame rates weren't even really didn't become a thing till what, like the PS2 360, that sort of time frame. So
At least with
giving-
people being obsessed about them, yeah.
Yeah. Like the obsession, I think, is kind of weird at times. But back then, like almost every like NES and Super Nintendo game runs at 60. I mean, there are exceptions, but most of them do. But it feels like this is like it's running at like 15 or 20 or something.
Yeah, which was pretty standard for the time. It runs about as smoothly as
Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time, most Jaguar games.
Oh God, what's that one Jaguar racing? Checkered Flag.
Oh fuck, Checkered Flag.
That game that's running at like 5 frames a second. It is ridiculous. That's just
like,
a bad Virtua Racing. Just play Virtua Racing.
Yeah, pick up Virtual Racing Deluxe on 32X. That's an enjoyable time.
Oh yeah, or I think these days you could probably just emulate the arcade version.
Oh yeah, it's on Switch. There's like an excellent version of it on Switch.
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, Virtua Racing's awesome.
There's a good Saturn version too, surprisingly.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So graphics and sound. I mean, it like most of everything about this game, it's fine.
There's just not much to say, man, and that's what sucks.
Yeah. I did want to go into reception a little bit because it was actually a little interesting to me. The game, for the most part, the 3DO version, anyways, got like 7.75 out of 10 from EGM.
Sure.
Which I guess for the time, but they then also gave the Saturn version a 4.3. So,
well, the Saturn version came out 2 years later.
Yeah, and by then they probably realized this is not as good as it was when we first played it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about re-releases in general, don't get rated as high, even if the game's fantastic. Like look at Wind Waker, for example. The Wii U port, which is a lot of people say is better than the original version, didn't get rated as high. It just happens.
Yeah. Like, I also find it interesting, like 3DO Magazine, in their interesting tendency to harshly criticize 3DO games, gave it 3 out of 5 stars.
It's so funny that, literally the magazine for 3DO is like harsh as fuck on those games. Like, I kind of love that.
The funniest thing to me is the first game we covered was Crash and Burn, and they were super positive about Crash and Burn. And then every other game since that they covered, they were harsh on it. I was like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like I went to the Internet Archive and somebody has the first 3DO magazine issue. Like it's just there and you can just like flip through it and it'll be curious. It's like news and an advertisement for Virtuoso.
That's one we got to cover at some point.
Oh, we will. But there's like a giant section of like just reviews. Like this magazine is like 60 pages, man.
Yeah. I've been trying to find physical copies. They're not easy to find.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah. Like the reviews. Yeah. There's like a bunch of them. Yeah. Like they do like Need for Speed. That gets like a 2-page spread. They give it, like 4.5, I think. Yeah,
they were nice to like the games that deserved it for the most part.
Yeah, Theme Park got a 5. The hell?
Which is interesting because I mean, to be fair, that was a fine port. That game's just horribly aged at this point.
Yeah. Just Rise of the Robots, Way of the Warrior got 3 stars.
That's generous, to be honest.
Come on, man.
I mean, I love Way of the Warrior because of how stupid it is, but 3 stars is a little much.
Yeah, I'm gonna flip through this on my own time.
In terms of,
I'd be curious to read these.
Yeah, in terms of most like comments, like a lot of people criticize the controls as being overly sensitive, which to be fair, I do see. But they praise the graphics, which I guess for the time, understandable.
Sure.
And then some people like the FMVs, and other people thought the FMVs were cringe. So
They're not that bad.
no, they're fine, honestly.
As I think you and me are more FMV veterans than some other people, you know?
Oh, I love them when they're shit. So like when I
Yeah.
see shitty FMVs, I'm always like, this is great.
Oh yeah, but even then, it's like I like Sam Barlow. Like I've played a bunch. Like I played through her story. I'm playing a little bit of Immortality. You know, like these are games that have genuinely good acting, and like the FMV is really good and is like core, like part of the game. You know what I mean? So I've seen the spectrum of like modern FMV games that try to actually be good, and then the older ones which are like Sewer Shark. You know, like
Yeah.
I've seen the spectrum, and
Corpse
this one
Killer, like stuff like that.
Corpse Kill is great.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I love it, but it's
But fuck that game. I fucking hate
Yes.
that game though.
yes.
But like this one falls somewhere in like the middle where it's like it's not crazy batshit, but it's not like genuinely good either. You know?
No, it's like it's very sterile, I think is the best way of
Yeah,
describing it.
exactly. Exactly.
Some last minute things to bring up. This game was interestingly the pack-in game for the Gold Star 3DO.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, this game almost does feel like a pack-in because it's so whatever that like if you bought a 3DO and it's like, oh, this game came with it, you'd play it.
I mean,
But-
to be honest, I'd prefer this over our pack-in, which was the Crash and Burn.
Yes, I would say this is better than Crash and Burn. Yes, we need to do like a ranking. You know,
I think
like
we
I've been watching way too much of like Jeff Gertzman rating all the NES games, and it had me thinking like we should probably have like a list of the 3DO games that we've played and
You know
put
what
them
I'm-
in the list.
You know what could be fun? When we get to episode 50, we rank what we've reviewed so far.
I'd like that, and then beyond that we can add to it.
Yeah, and then when we get to 75, we can do it again.
Sure, but yeah, we should do that.
The only other two like housekeeping things I noticed are this game had a expansion of sorts called what was it called? It was Operation Jumpgate, which was released in 95.
Yes, and I'm assuming it's just more levels.
So the PlayStation and Saturn versions, those extra 5 levels that those versions have are actually the Operation Jumpgate levels.
Oh, okay.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then this game also had a sequel that was 3DO only called Shockwave 2 Beyond the Gate.
So at the end, what they go through Stargate, and then the sequel is them coming out of it.
Maybe. That game is so obscure, though, it doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
There might be good reason for that, though.
I'm assuming it's just
though
more of the
the
same,
audi-
to be honest.
Yeah, though the audience may demand we play this game.
Maybe at some point. I'd honestly like to play the Return Fire expansion before we get
Oh,
to this.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah, I'd want to play that. Though I can say Shockwave 2, not expensive.
I'll have to
Thank
look
God.
into it.
Though I think it's 2 discs.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that'll be interesting to look into.
So my guess is probably more FMV.
Most likely. I mean, that's why Wing Commander is multi-discs.
Yeah, or a Psychic Detective.
I still got to find that one.
Yeah, I'm begging you to play that one.
No, I'm going to. I just
Oh yeah.
I might have to emulate it. But yeah, so now going on to Must Play OK Stay Away. Honestly, for this one, I'm gonna just say it's fine.
Yeah. Fine.
I'm gonna
You
break
know,
the
I wouldn't s-
scale again.
I wouldn't say run away from it. Like, nah. But you'll probably play it for like 15 minutes and be like, this is boring. And then move on to something else, like Petanque or something.
We'll get to that one eventually.
At least that
Um,
game's more interesting than this.
That game's interesting, but it's also Petanque. I don't want to say too much because I'm actually looking forward to that episode eventually. But Yeah, to be honest, like when I was playing this game, I think my exact reaction the whole time was basically, "Yeah, this is a 3DO game."
Yeah, but it doesn't have any of that like 3DO charm or anything about it. You know,
Yeah,
like
like
this
even the
game could have been like a PC game in the mid '90s and it would have the same effect. You know what I mean?
even the shittiest like 3DO games we've played so far, like PO'd at least had like a charm to it, despite being a very
Well,
not
PO
great
has something
game.
to talk about.
Yeah,
You know, like Shockwave is one of those like anti-podcast games.
yeah,
Where
like
there's just like, what do you say?
we got more out of goddamn Triple Threat. Like, think about that for a minute.
Well, that helped. We had Aaron.
Yeah,
That always helps.
hamburger fucking helper. Where the
Dude,
fuck did
well,
that come from?
I have no idea, but Aaron's always a good
Yeah,
conversation piece. You know.
we'll have him back when we eventually cover that puzzle game. But
Oh, which other one were we doing?
the puzzle game made by the D team. I'm forgetting its name. Right now.
Oh yeah, I forget it, but I know which one you're talking about.
But yeah, so I'm gonna just call this one a double fine because it's a fine
Double
time.
Double Fine Productions.
Hey.
Some Psychonauts, some Costume Quest, some stacking. Stacking's a cool game.
You went there. I was gonna give like Dre a shout out and say it's a fine time.
A double fine time. Could you imagine like Dre and Tim Schafer doing a podcast? That'd be cool. That'd be interesting.
Does Dre like Tim Schafer's games? I'm just curious.
We'll find out. We'll probably find it. If Dre listens, Dre, tell us. Do you like Tim Schafer? Do you like the Double Fine stuff? Because I know you're a bit of a contrarian. Maybe unintentionally, but you know. It makes for interesting conversation, you know.
But
I love Tim Schafer. I love Double Fine. Love all.
Oh,
that stuff.
Double Fine games are great. I do
Yes,
enjoy
I
those.
wish there were some on here because then we could talk about them.
I know. I
Bro,
think
if
this
Day of the
is
Tentacle was on here, I'd be like, this is the best game on the system.
I know. But yeah, I think we mentioned it at the start, but Plumbers next week.
Well, maybe not next. No, unless you want to do like initial impressions because it comes out on the 5th of March.
True.
So, yeah, I would have gotten a couple hours with it.
Well, yeah, I should say next game we'll do is Plumbers.
Yes, because as promised, the definitive version when it comes out on my Series X, I will scrape that thing clean.
I'm
I will.
curious about.
I'll get all the achievements. I will do everything. I will 100% it because this is for science. To
Yes.
quote Jeff Gertzman, because I've just been watching him a lot. This is for science. So I will be doing a scientific investigation into Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, the definitive edition. And hopefully I can come back with something interesting. Hopefully.
I'm curious about that dungeon crawling mode. That's got me the
that's
most
what I'm
intrigued.
curious about. That's the main thing. You know, I'll scrub through all the archival material to see if there's really any interesting quotes in there. Of course, I've already played the game.
Oh,
Funnily enough, back in the day when YouTube had annotations,
Oh yeah, you could play it on YouTube.
you could play it on YouTube, and I played it. There's a couple games I played on YouTube that way. Like I played that. I played a game called the Daedalus Encounter. There was another game I can't remember. There was a couple I played through that. I think someone tried to do. I don't think it was Night Trap. It was one of those like kind of games they tried, and it was just kind of rough.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I mean there'll be tons to say about Plumbers, but
Oh yes.
actually timing that out, that'll actually be good because this is episode 28. Next week we'll do something next week, and then that'll be episode 30. So
Sure.
nice even. Do you want to do like another developer showcase maybe?
Crystal Dynamics.
Yeah, let's talk about Crystal.
Yes. Without
right.
Crystal Dynamics, 3DO is just an expensive toy.
Yeah, I mean, it's an EA machine. That's
Well,
about it.
Well, that's literally that 3DO magazine I found on Internet Archive. That is like the back of it.
Oh, that's epic.
And it lists Total Eclipse, The Horde, Off-Road Interceptor, Star Control 2, and Petanque.
Oh, nice.
Because I don't think Gex was out yet.
No, Gex was later.
No. I can't wait to cover The Horde. That's going to be a good one. I'm excited to play that one.
The Horde. So I have the Saturn port. It is an interesting game.
Yes. The 3DO version is incredibly expensive.
Yes, it is. That's why I have the Saturn version.
That's why I'll be emulating it.
But yeah, so next week we're going to talk some Crystal Dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
With that, everybody, thank you for joining us on the 3DO Experience. You can find the 3DO Experience on all the podcasting platforms. There will be a video version of this podcast available on YouTube shortly before it releases on all your podcasting streams. And if you'd like, you can find all of our links at Linktree/The Barber Who Games, and you can join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to find all things gaming, collecting, the 3DO Experience, Geek Addicts, talk gaming, anime, all sorts of nonsense. And
All sorts of nonsense.
Yeah, it's a wild place sometimes. Not quite gaming together weird, but like we're still a little weird. Hi, Dave. And with that, everybody, we will see you all later.
Bye-bye.
If you're not playing on a 3DO system, what are you playing with?